All right, this week we are reviewing systems of equations with 3 variables and 3 equations. Part 1 is where 2 of the equations already have a variable eliminated. So you've already been given a 2 by 2 system. We'll solve this system for those 2 variables and then substitute back into the first equation to get the third variable. Your notes for part 2, which Ms. Arnold and I recommend you doing on Wednesday, will have 3 equations with 3 variables in them. So it's got an extra bit of work required. But today we're just starting here where we've already got a 2 by 2. So those 2 highlighted equations have x and z in them. We're going to solve them using elimination, just like we reviewed last week. When I look at those 2 equations, I feel like x is the easier variable to eliminate. And what I really want to make that happen is I really want this to have a negative 3x out front so that it cancels with this 3x. And the only thing I have to do to make that happen is to multiply the second equation by 3. So here's what I've got after that step. The top equation stays the same. And the bottom equation, after distributing the 3 everywhere to both sides of the equation, gives me this. Negative 3x minus 21z equals 18. And now I'm just going to add those 2 equations vertically. So the x's cancel. When I add the z's, I get negative 23z. And when I add the right-hand side, I get positive 23. And then dividing both sides by the negative 23 gives me z equals negative 1. Okay, so we're just going to hold this here. Now I will take that z back into those 2 highlighted equations and solve for the other variable, which is the x. It doesn't really matter which one you plug it into. So I'm going to use the top equation, this one right here. Hold on, I'm getting used to the stylus and this notebook and touch screens and all that. Hold on. Okay, so I'm trying to solve for x, so it's going to stay x. It's minus 2 times, oh my gosh, that pen icon, do you see it? I don't know if you can see it on the video, but it's floating around every time I touch something. It is driving me insane. So minus 2 times z, which is negative 1. Oh, I can't take it. Oh my gosh, it's just driving me crazy. It wasn't doing that a second ago. Like, we don't have enough stuff to drive us crazy. The technology is about to make me lose my mind. Okay, so 3x plus 2 equals 5. Subtract 2 from both sides. Gives me 3x equals 3. Divide by 3. X equals 1. So this is going to just hang out here. So now I've got my x value and my z. The only thing missing now is my y. So here's where I will go grab the very first equation, this one right here, plug in the x equals 1 that I just found, the z equals negative 1, and then all that's left is, and that's all I need to find out what y is. So here we go. So that is x, which is 1, plus 2 times y, which I don't know, minus 3 times z, which I do know is negative 1, and that equals negative 2. So now it's just some good old-fashioned math after that. Negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. And I'm going to add that to this one here, and that will give me 4. Now subtract 4 from both sides. And that's 2y equals negative 6. and then divide both sides by 2, y equals -3. And your final answer you want to write as an ordered triple. Remember, you're not writing it in the order you solved, you're writing it in alphabetical order. So your x, then your y, and then your z. So it's 1, -3, 1. So this next problem is set up differently from the first example. So I recommend that you pause the video for a moment and look at the problem and come up with a strategy for how you could use this information, specifically the x equals 5, to move forward with the problem. Go ahead and pause and think about that. Okay, so you're back. This is what I hope you thought to do. Take this x equals 5 and plug it in here for x and here for x. Now, at first that seems like, what good did that do you? You still have 1,000 variables floating around. But let's look at how that would proceed after plugging in 5. So 23 times 5 here gives me 115. And then I can subtract that 115 to both sides, so that I'm just combining like terms, and that gives me 25. So I still have 2 variables, so it kind of feels like this didn't really do me any good, but it will all become clear in a moment. Then when I plug that 5 into that third equation, that's 8 times 5 there on the bottom, which is 40. Plus 18y plus 3z equals 97. Subtract that 40 to both sides and gives you 18y plus 3z equals 37. So what I have now is, I'm sorry, 57. Good night. All right. So now what I have is these 2 equations that make a 2x2 system. So let's look at those stacked on top of each other so we could figure out how to eliminate. Well, maybe we didn't have to go through that much trouble right here. Let me just bring this one down here instead of rewriting everything. So take a minute and look at which variable you feel like would be easiest to eliminate right here. I feel like the z is the easier one. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this equation and multiply everything by -3. Because once I distribute that through to here, that will be -3z, and it will cancel with this one. Okay. So let's bring that down here. -3 times 8y is -24y. -3 times +z is -3z. And -3 times 25 is -75. So the z's cancel. And the y's give me -6y. And 57 minus 75 is -18. And now we have just this one variable. We divide both sides by -6, and y equals 3. Okay, and we already know that x equals 5, so that's pretty money right there. Let's find the last variable. I know x now, I know y, I just need to find z. So I go back to the original problem. I can pick either of those long equations to figure out z. I think I'm going to do the first one because if you notice, in that equation, the z has no coefficient. So here's what that's going to give me. 23 times x, which we knew was 5, plus 8 times y, which I now know is 3, plus z, which is my unknown, so it stays there, equals 140. We already did the math earlier on 23 times 5, that's 115. 8 times 3 is 24. $115 plus 24 is $139. Subtract 139, z is 1. So then we just write our equation as an ordered triple in alphabetical order with x first. X is 5, y is 3, and z is 1. All right, there you go. There are your notes for today. Enjoy. Enjoy. Why did I say that so stupid? All right, here we go. And stop.